Well, hey, everybody. My name is Jared Malott, and this is episode 6 of The Coltist, an Indianapolis Colts podcast. We'll talk about the Indianapolis Colts, obviously, football as a sport, the NFL as a league. We'll talk about life too. We've got some heavy topics to talk about this week. I think, first of all, if you would, if you haven't already, please do make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can click the little bell to make sure notifications are on when I post new content. You know what I'm about here. I love football. I love video games. That's generally where my attention is, where the content I create is going to be. Right now, we're in the middle of the NFL season. It's an exciting time, I think, because the narrative is sort of being written, right? Where the Colts are now 1-4, right? The next 5 games, I believe, are winnable, and so, quite frankly, it sets up nicely for a 2 game stretch, sort of to begin, or I guess sort of thread a needle where the Colts could potentially beat, in my mind, the Bills and Bucks in back-to-back weeks, if it all kind of lines up the way I think it could. Because, and here's why. Um, Obviously, I'm leading off with what sounds pretty bananas. That means the Colts would be like 7-4. Um, but I think the Texans are certainly a beatable football team. And I obviously started to say that with a straight face. And the Colts obviously are 1-4, so we're going to eat our humble pie too. Um, but the Texans aren't playing Deshaun Watson, and the Colts are getting T.Y. Hilton back. And I think those two sentences, Deshaun Watson's not playing for the Texans this week, and the Colts are getting T.Y. Hilton back, um, tells me if I were the NFL, I would be on notice that the Colts are turning this bus around. And I kind of like to look at data to drive a sort of story I want to tell you. And one of the main points I want to get across is that right now we are really fortunate uh, that we have a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL playing very well. And the way I can sort of prove that to you is to tell you the 2 quarterbacks ranked just ahead of Carson Wentz, coming in at 15th in the league in quarter rate, not QBR. That's the ESPN infused rating that isn't real. I'm talking about the actual rating. Um, is like 99.7 and puts him about 15th in the league. And the player directly above him is Aaron Rodgers, and the guy above that is uh, Josh Allen, at 13. So when you think about the company directly above where Carson Wentz is playing is who I would consider 2 elite quarterbacks in the NFL in terms of their quality of play, right? Who are clearly also being outplayed by 12 other players. I'm not saying that to disrespect anyone, but the point I'm trying to make is right now the level of quarterback play in the NFL is something like I've never seen. Um, I'm I'm thoroughly impressed with a lot of these kids' pocket presence, and it's just getting younger and younger in terms of the average age of quarterback in the NFL. Um, I have been a fan of Carson Wentz, um, particularly his acquisition, not a big fan of his thoughts on vaccination and actions regarding vaccination. But on the field, first of all, he has demonstrated a level of toughness that most men only aspire to, and has also played a quality of quarterback that had he scored a few more touchdowns, I might get choked up talking about. Like he's really played some. When I say hero ball, um, Carson Wentz has been playing the kind of hero ball that you would want out of a quarterback, that you did what the quarterbacks did to get him. It was a lot of words to say that, right? Like, I think over time, if as so long as he's able to stay on his feet, he will prove to be worth the investment. uh, I think. It's such a You've kind of seen me through the last few weeks go through a gamut of emotions, right? Where I've sort of been really uh, highly critical of Frank Reich's in-game decision making, play calling. Sorry, guys, I'm in my eye. Decision making, play calling. Last week to a lesser extent, but again, still are 1-4. Uh, Obviously, get the Texans. Then I believe the Colts have the Jets, right? The 49ers, Titans, and Jets, Jags, and then Bills, Bucks, and again Texans, Pats. I think there's a sure loss here in Arizona against the Cardinals, and then like I said, I think here's a fun one. Colts are 1-4. So they've played five. They have 12 games left, and I think they go. There's a very good potential they go 11-1. Wow. Um, that though requires a myriad of things to happen. One of them is T.Y. Hilton comes back healthy the week the Colts play host to the Texans. Uh, Now, if this were on the road, I would be a little more excited because T.Y. Hilton, particularly on the road, has been lethal. Um, but I'll take him at home. I just think there's a T.Y. Hilton brings a dynamic, a steady hand to the offense, brings a level of comfort to a quarterback that not only can you throw a ball when his back. Basically, here's probably something. Try to give you sort of a perspective maybe you haven't heard about, but timing and a relationship a quarterback has with a wide receiver, and the knowledge that two players share about a route or a particular timing on a particular situation lets a quarterback throw the ball when the guy's back's turned to you, knowing that he's going to turn his head to the left, his hands are going to be here, ball's going to hit him in the hands right as he turns. Um, Regardless of where you are in the field, when he starts to roll, they roll together. It's almost like you've got a dancing partner, right? T.Y. Hilton is probably and I hate to say it, he's probably good at salsa, right? So he's somebody that is probably an easy dance partner. And when you have someone that's a wide receiver, an easy dance partner, when a play breaks down, he's going to find the soft spot in the zone, make the catch, get upfield, make a play. And he's super fast. And you've seen how the Colts have smart enough players. By the way, this is a caveat to throw some sunshine on Darius Leonard, who's gotten off to a slow start. I'm not really particularly. We're gonna sit here and talk poorly about players. I'm definitely pro player. I'm anti-establishment. But um, I think that Darius Leonard having the awareness, the in-game awareness to find the speed on this return opportunity and try to get the ball to him, regardless of whether or not it went off, was Tesla like. You know what I mean? Like it was so um, brilliant, and I mean that like a brilliant in-game spur of the moment decision making was to realize that I'm probably not outrunning these guys. This has to be a teammate, otherwise he's taking me down. And then I'm definitely gonna hand the ball to him. I get it. He was down. That was a still. If his knee wasn't down, it was definitely um, it was definitely not a forward lateral, or you know what I mean. It was definitely a backwards lateral. That was I time and placement. It's just it's crazy, man. People don't understand how objects move. Um, they ultimately they said his knee was down. I believe they said his knee was down. Not that it was an illegal pitch, because it definitely wasn't. So clear that up too. But yeah, so I think that Carson Wentz has displayed for me a developing knowledge of the playbook. He's starting to put balls. He's starting to throw balls into spots where you're like, really, he's hitting the trash can like Aaron Rodgers, right? Obviously, I just told you he's playing mostly his rate, like his rating as a quarterback, most closely resembles that of Aaron Rodgers. So, and I know people are it's a funny numbers, and the Colts are 1-4. Just so we're all clear, this audience is clear. The way I feel about the win-loss record is that your team owns a win-loss record. Quarterbacks don't own a win-loss record. Head coaches own a win-loss record in the short term. GMs in the more towards the mid to long term. Owners, again, it's more of a long term play. To feed that thought process, I wanted to talk about Jim Irsay coming out and saying he wants to win 2 Super Bowls in the next decade. First, to also borrow a line from Pat McAfee, I find it interesting that he at one point recently was saying 3 in a row, and now has backed off to 2 in 10 years. Um, I know why. Okay, it's highly unlikely they'll win more than one, um, and that's just based on math. He has a 1 in 32 chance of winning a Super Bowl in a year, and then to try to do it twice in 10 years. Um, it's not great odds. So that doesn't mean it's not an absolutely achievable goal. It's pretty clear to me what the Colts lack, they can absolutely make up for. And I think that the Colts have enough left to improve for my uh, the way I would kind of see it, that they can still make not necessarily make moves this year, but they could still improve as a team in a short amount of time in the next 2 to 5 years, where they could be particularly potent. And that's not to again, I'm one of those people, I don't want to not talk about this season, right? I want to sit here and talk to you about. We're off to a 1-4 start, and I think they could win 11 of the next 12. It's hard to really talk about anything outside of that, because anything outside of that is a lot of us playing some middling football, and it's a dark place. We don't want to go. We don't want to go there. But I really do believe, like, they host the Texans, who don't have Deshaun Watson. I'll take Carson Wentz. Right? They don't have Watt. They don't have, you know what I mean? They're not. This isn't the Texans that you're used to seeing. That isn't to say that anything can happen on any given Sunday, right? But the 49ers, right? They have a quarterback issue. Jimmy Garoppolo, uh, they just Trey Lance, right? They're trying to figure that situation out. They're beatable. The Titans at home. I understand that the Titans are tough. Titans are beatable. Then they host the Jets. Come on, it's the Jets. Then they host the Jags. Come on, it's the Jags at home. Now you got to go to Buffalo the week before Thanksgiving, and then sort of the week of Thanksgiving they host the Buccaneers. Obviously, the probability is that if you're going to lose a game, it's at Buffalo. If you're going to win one of those games, it's probably hosting the Bucks. That's just kind of the way probability works. Um, and then, but there's still a chance to again beat a team you lost to by 3 in the playoffs last year. That loss had to linger with you. For my interpretation of this game, for DeForest Buckner to come out and say this loss this past week to the Ravens was a devastating loss. First of all, I empathize with him, except that I don't own those losses. I'm not a part of that organization. I enjoy your success, but I get to leave that failure with the players and not wear that personally. And that's kind of how I've chosen to live my life. And I get it. I sit here and try to sow seeds of hope, because that's all we got left. And so I know there's probably some people that are going to listen to my podcast and think, well, why is this guy making this? Because there's a lot of people that make content and they're negative and they're, you know what I mean? They're not, it's not entertainment, right? I think the Colts are in an interesting position where they've got about 3 weeks to turn it around and be a 4-4 team, right? And I think there's a very good chance that they start Hard Knocks at a 500 ball club. And they need to win like 5 of the next 8, maybe 6 of the next 8. Really, you need to get probably like a 12 wins, I think, to have a legitimate shot. I think the division's winnable, and I'm not even going to speak to that at length because I'm convinced of that, right? And it's like I want to keep bringing this up. Remember how I told you there will be no accountability, there will be no jobs lost because this is a really winnable division. Because I get that the Jaguars have Trevor Lawrence, but he's a pup, okay? But none of these franchises have their guy. I mean, they have a guy. Ryan Tannehill is a guy, right? Um, the Texans should, if even if they were trotting out Deshaun Watson, they're certainly beatable. So yeah, like I said, the biggest issue here for the Colts is that they've been injured, and that they're gonna be missing pieces, and they're gonna hopefully get it all together for the playoffs. Is kind of what I'm gathering. The Colts are sort of shooting for, um, but that doesn't mean that we can't criticize. And one of the criticisms that I have right now is the mismanagement of players surrounding Braden Smith. Braden Smith, and this was one that was addressed today. Kudos to the many, many people that write about the Indianapolis Colts that I probably am ripping stories off of and repeating, but it's not like it isn't public knowledge, or that your Twitter followings aren't massive. This is an upstart podcast. Give me a break, forever wherever that happens. But uh, the reality is that Braden Smith should have been on IR, and now he's going on missing like 3 weeks, and like they don't think he's recovering fast enough, and it's like you should have just stuffed him on IR. And then I really think there's some merit in wanting to see your offensive line perform before you put your $25 million quarterback behind it, and then you need to flesh out your backup spot anyway. You knew you're going to camp out and lose these games. I think personally, maybe it's just me. There's uh there's probably a little value in throwing Carson Wentz on IR there the first 5 games of the season here, before, and now that I sort of look at the schedule, I kind of see why the Colts did have kind of grinned and bared it. Is kind of how the Colts have done it so far, where they've been in some games, offense is kind of sputtering along. Here they are 1-4, got a few winnable games ahead of you. T.Y. Hilton comes back. But like I said, it's again one of them things where you can see that there's a very real possibility that I'm sitting here setting you up saying they could go 11-1 in their next 12 games and be very excited. Be very exciting. I've been saying before I even started coaching football, when I started um, scouting quarterbacks and trying to figure out what the difference between a guy that's going to get drafted in the first round and be successful and a guy that isn't going to make it in the league, right? Um, for example, One of the problems that I had with like a Josh Rosen was that he didn't look like an athlete to me. He looked like a dude that came out of a lab, you know, taking his glasses, the glasses off his head, and sort of dropping his smock or whatever, you know what I mean, and picking up the pads, putting it on, you know what I mean, wearing the doctor's hat as a do-rag, you know what I mean, you put it on a helmet, going out and hucking some rock, um, and that not translating to a league full of Olympians, and really that's the toughness is something that is very hard to coach, but that needs to sort of make a return in my eyes in order for teams like the Colts. They're gonna have to find players that are just there every game, productive every game. It's fortuitous that the Colts have two running backs that are very productive when you put the ball in their hands, and Naheem Hines and Jonathan Taylor. And they've been sort of ramping up their production. And I can now, like I said, now I'm starting to smile when I talk about the Colts because I can kind of see with a little more clarity that the Colts are in a position that not a lot of the league started off the week healthy, and now their injury reports are starting to stack up. And when I say they, you can point to any number of NFL teams and start to see they're starting to lose their star players too. They're headed trending downward, and we look at, for example, things like that quarterback, not QBR. So I'm not talking about the fantasy rating of quarterbacks. I'm talking about the actual rating for Carson Wentz is shooting up. Like I think I want to say he went from 23 to 15 in 1 week. So he had a very good week last week. I think the Colts have a guy that if you can keep him healthy and interested in just interested in football and I don't care about what you feel about anything else. Um, I think that the Colts have a guy that could very well lead you to the promised land. And shout out to Zach Hicks. He pointed out that that he's rushing some throws and he doesn't set his feet when he throws, and that comes from a lack of comfort, of like not being comfortable in an offense. And I think that I want to ask, I'm going to tag Zach when I post this article. Um, I want you to look at his footwork against Texans when they have like a subpar pass rush, and he's got a guy like T.Y. Hilton that he inherently trusts on the field. I feel like the ball will come out more, cleaner with more confidence. Uh, I think that he's developing sort of what I would consider like mastery level skills within the offense, knowing what he wants and becoming, it's like turning knobs. Um, I really think that the offensive line woes will become less of a factor if you've got strong group wide receivers. But right now, I think the Colts have one too many bad football players on the field. And again, I don't want to talk about people poorly. That's one of the things I'm trying to avoid. That's not what I'm sitting here doing. That's bringing negativity is not okay. But there are some poorer football players, Ashton Doolin, right, that you would rather have a guy like T.Y. Hilton on the field than. And when you do that, defenses have to play different. Their posture's different. They have to sort of play more fair football. Um, a lot of times when you watch like the All 22 or an alternate angle and you see how defensive lines are attacking your front, it becomes very apparent that you have to have a really good offensive line because, and I'm talking like they'll leave the center and one guard unblocked, right, on an obvious pass down. And they'll put a guy head up over your ball side tackle or outside, and then they'll walk up a backer blitzing ball side. So they are blitzing his in his face, right? To his and Carson Wentz is right-handed, so they're taking away the slant ball, right? on obvious pass downs, leaving. That's why you see the Colts run the ball between the right A gap a lot, is because there's literally a lane 50 feet wide, and you could literally drive a Mack truck through it. The way teams are pressing the Colts, so they run a front side blitz, and then backside, what they have is they have the other uh, defensive tackle either head up or shading outside shoulder of the guard on the backside, and then they have a head up or outside shade defensive end backside, and then they're gonna blitz. So they're sending four or five, right? In my example, you had them sending uh, the center guard unblocked. You just have two. They sent five on that particular play, but they could still just like walk up that front side backer and then send him back into guard the flat area, for example, and take away the flat. And that's sort of what they're doing with that front side backer now. And the Colts have shown it is smart what they're doing, and what they've been working toward really did shine, was shining, weird, um, in the first three quarters of the game against the Ravens. Again, that's a 4-1 Ravens team. I If I wasn't a Colts fan, I'd happily be a Ravens fan, and I think that's been pretty apparent with any of the content I've been putting out. I really do like favor organizations that I see as like largely going to be successful because they make good decisions. Lamar Jackson is a game-changing player, just like Darius Leonard, just like Jonathan Taylor. I really tell you, just like Carson Wentz, I really believe it. Obviously, just like a guy like Quentin Nelson, and not on the same level though. But I want to talk about a guy like is it Chris Reed, the backup guard for the Colts? What a get! What a get! That's a good get, and that isn't going to get talked about. Guys are going to rather talk about Davenport and how poor he's played, right? Rather than talk about how uh, you know Ryan Kelly's played well. Uh, the interior linemen for the Colts have been stellar. And we don't talk about big guys nice. We only talk about big boys poorly, because they're kind of going out of style in the league. But you gotta have them, gotta have them. Um, but Kelly, Glowinski, uh, and Nelson and Reed had all played at a high level. Obviously, comparatively to Braden Smith playing poorly now, and then obviously trying to play through an injury to the degree of now being out 3 games and sort of screwing up the IR situation for the Colts, and then also Eric Fisher coming back off. And I think one of the developing narratives will be out of this, obviously. If the Colts can get some decent compensation for Marlon Mack, then there's obviously merit in re-signing him because you did get something in exchange. You bought a product, you used it publicly. It created value for you when it left. In that they'll probably, in my eyes, get probably like a fifth or sixth round draft pick. That's being really nice, and it's rumored it's Kansas City. But here's what I'll tell you. It's far more likely that there's not a really good comparison. Again, I don't like to talk poorly about people because I wouldn't wish this on anybody. But it's far more likely that Marlon Mack winds up like a Brandon Roy than a Kobe Bryant. And what I mean when I say that is that I want for everyone to never get injured, and I want them, when they get injured, to recover fully and be 110% of the athlete that you were. But I can look you dead in the eye or into this camera and tell you that that's not simply not the case. Marlon Mack looked pretty good. Marlon Mack did not look nearly as good as he has. I think that even though he doesn't look as good as he has, he still looked good enough to play on someone's football team. And unfortunately, I'm just afraid that there's an irreparable tear in his tires, and that we're gonna have one day I'll be sitting here cringing watching him get injured, and it will probably be before the end of the season. He doesn't look like that much You know what I mean? I don't think he's worth possibly a fifth or sixth round pick, but he's gonna fetch that. And then I just don't see um, the sort of burst. And I have a feeling I know what I'm looking at. Um, and on the same flip of the coin, Eric Foster has looked like he's just straight up getting beat. So you see how it's very difficult to feel good about the Colts after I get done saying I think we can go 12 and or 11 and 1 our next 12. Um, when we're making bad personnel decisions and we're signing guys that have injuries that have a low probability of returning to form. Um, and I can point to a Marlon Mack really not being able to produce for a team until a week like 5 and then only on a part-time basis. You hear me talking. And then they're going to try to get value out of him and trade him. And like I said, the rumors already are Kansas City, and more power to him. I hope he goes there and I hope he crushes and makes me look bad, but I'm afraid it's more likely he just gets injured. Same now for Eric Fisher, given what's going on with Braden Smith. Clearly, the Colts, where the Colts have a problem, is evaluating and maintaining tackles and quarterbacks as a result. And it's very difficult, just like it's difficult to get really good pass rushers, it's also very difficult to get the guys that block your pass rushers. And while I want Eric Fisher and Braden Smith to be those people for the ever make them immortal, um, I also want their backups to be good. And I think that we don't have those guys at starter and we don't have good tackles at backup. So that's concerning. It's fixable. I think you can sign those players immediately. Also, I think the Colts are in trouble at cornerback. Obviously, this last week, I think they were down five cornerbacks at one point, and that's one of the reasons that it came back. And I'm obviously I hate when I hear people say like I could have told you the Colts are going to lose when. No, I didn't know the Colts were going to lose until they like actually lost. Um, but then in hindsight, there were a lot of plays where it was a snap decision and you do the wrong thing. For example, again, to call out Zach Hicks for great analysis. Obviously, he's working again for Sports Illustrated and he's verified. You don't need me shouting him out. But he pointed out that on that last touchdown to Mark Andrews, um, what he should have done is stayed in the lane between Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. And for no reason, like not enough of a reason, Leonard dove like inside as though the quarterback was going to throw to the running back up the middle and opened up the lane for Lamar to throw the ball for the touchdown to Mark Andrews. And obviously the in the millisecond decision making, all of those things can be fixed and drilled into oblivion, and guys like Darius Leonard tend to make more plays than not. And when you observe the product on whole, he's a freak, or a maniac. I'm sorry. And I think that, like I said, if the Colts are able, and it sounds so weird saying it, man, to sit here in the wake of the absolute shit show, the dumpster fire that the Colts have been through the first 5 weeks, to then look at the schedule and really think about what I was going to say when I sat down here tonight, and I have laughed all day. The Colts could legitimately go 11 and 1, and more realistically, more like 9 and 3, 10 and 2 in their last 12. They need to be at about 11 or 12, I think, wins to not have to really run the gamut in the AFC and not play like a heater early on. But I know they want to win and get like a 2 seed, and so you really got to kind of think about how's the rest of the league going to shake out, and what I am hesitant to say as I kind of close it out here, but I got to get it out. When you look at regression to the mean, I had said it before. I've been saying it. I set this up for you. When you look at the Colts statistically, they're underperforming, and then you had a lot, and I'm getting kind of emotional thinking about it. They got a lot of teams, a lot of quarterbacks that were overperforming. Like, holy shit, these quarterbacks are playing out of their minds. And then what you started to see is those, not even necessarily those guys play worse, but everybody else sort of elevate their play, and it's sort of like they're sort of coming together, and those lines will eventually cross. And then as those lines cross, and what I'm talking about is quarterback play, quality of quarterback play for a lot of players is declining. For Carson Wentz, it's going up and sharply. Like I said, a plus 8 spots. There's only 32 starters, right? So he just moved up a whole quadrant in 1 week. It sets up nicely for what I could call like a soft schedule, and soft is sort of subjective. All these games are difficult, and are all, you can absolutely lose them all. What do we? Right, but that's not what I'm here to tell you. What I am telling you is that I think legitimately, um, Bills Cardinals give me pause. Bucks too. So there's 3 contests that I'm concerned about. But really, though, I don't think the Arizona Cardinals, if healthy, I Kyler Murray, Chandler Jones, Hopkins, I just think are dangerous as hell. And I don't know that Darius Leonard can chase down a Kyler Murray, where I think Darius Leonard could chase down a Josh Allen, and I think that's a known quantity and a beatable team. But the Cardinals give me pause. Again, I think the Colts could beat the Bucks at home. So, like I said, those are really the remaining games for the Colts this year that I really am like super hyped about. The other ones I just see as regular contests, right? So, obviously uh, painting different pictures as we go through the season. I'm obviously happy to sit here in front of a Stampede Blue flag. Obviously, Stampede Radio has been missing putting out content. Guys have had some things going on in their lives. If you've been kind of hanging on, you'll see that Stephen Reed just interviewed Reggie Wayne, and I think that's really cool. And you can catch his podcast on the Stampede Radio Network. But yeah, my name is Jared Malott. This has been the Coltist. How much time we have been recording here? Let's see. So it's 9:30, about 40 minutes. Before we go, last couple topics. Okay, I want to make sure I hit them. Henry, John Gruden. First of all, not shocked at all. John Gruden's resting bitch face looks like he looks like someone that says the N word. Um, like, you know what I mean? Like, and calls people faggot. Like that. He just looks like someone who says those words, right? So I'm not surprised that he has a chain of communication where he is being super misogynistic and uh, a bigot and a racist, mostly just a racist. And I find it particularly abhorrent because here's the problem: it's the slave driver slave relationship, where if you don't like black people, why the fuck would you want to be a coach in a league where 75 plus percent of the people that are in this league are people of color? What fool, what absolute moron, except he's a loser. He sort of put it together and won himself a Super Bowl to gain himself some relevance. But even Keyshawn Johnson today said that he felt like he was fake. And I don't know John Gruden. I hope he fades into obscurity. I think he needs to the people that still care about him uh, are gonna be near him, because I'd hate for him to, for example, hurt himself. Because that's a very real possibility. Because he really threw away a middling opportunity for a subpar football team. Um, and will probably just go back to work for ESPN after taking a couple year vacation, a la Urban Meyer, and then end up at another shitty franchise in 10 years down the road. And his son also clearly takes steroids. But yeah, and his name is like, what was it, Bubba or Buster? Anyway, I don't want to give him any shine either. But yeah, the about Gruden, not shocked. I want more. I want all the justice. Uh, I too have sinned. I too live in a glass house. I too throw stones. Um, I absolutely believe with beyond a shadow of a doubt, if you're involved in football, there's a chance that you have no filter and were the dominant sort of player in your space most of your life and have never been challenged on your vernacular. And as a result of never being challenged on your vernacular, terms like calling someone the N word or saying the word or calling someone a faggot or not to continue to use slurs, but making comments about people based on like their appearance or where they're from or their nationality, right? Like those things you'd filtered out of your right. For example, I did stand up comedy for a while. You may have caught my comedy if you've been following my channel. One of the things that always baffled me in terms of comedy was people were willing to make jokes at the expense of Jewish people. Okay, well I'm from bumfuck Indiana. Okay, I'm an atheist. I grew up in the Methodist Church. I have no real connection to a God. So when I hear someone make a joke about a person based on their nationality, specifically, oh, he's a Jew, right? And then I don't even remember what the bit was, and obviously that's why, it's because it's a stupid fucking joke based on a dumbass premise. But when it always bothered me that that was such a cheap outlet for what you would consider like bigotry, right? And the same thing with women, right? Men make jokes at the expense of women, right? It's another cheap out for bigotry. So I don't want John Gruden to be a cheap out for bigotry either. Okay, it's rampant, specifically with men, specifically with men in sports, specifically with men in male-dominated sports, specifically with men in male-dominated sports that aren't willing to sit here and say things like the shit that John Gruden said in them fucking emails I've been a part of my entire life, and I haven't done a good enough job of saying like, hey boys, one, if you're a white boy, it's probably just best to hum the lyrics. Uh, you should probably be curious rather than angry a lot in your life, and I, there's there's a million things right there that I could say that are the wrong thing, but I think what's most important is that it's not cancel culture when you lose an opportunity because of the decisions that you made. That's called accountability. That's called your actions have consequences. And what I hope we as a Colts community come together and understand is that bigotry is unacceptable. There's no such thing as locker room talk. They are considered professionals. Their entire lives are on camera, and they're basically a walking bank and then walking investment, a walking billboard. You cannot, as a walking billboard, representing. Think about like the Shield, the Oakland Raiders, Oakland Raiders, Las Vegas, right? That's a huge uh, cash boon for the United States. Then the NFL, like the most watched sports league on earth, probably Premier League, and then and then you have on top of that you have all of the networks that sort of like NFL Network, ESPN that support the NFL. And you think about what they're willing to accept as content. And when that went public, John Gruden, like I said, has a very real chance of sort of being the scapegoat for racism and bigotry and misogyny and all of the other isms and genies that John Gruden exhibited in these emails. But what I think needs to happen is a full blown accountability where people start to step forward and say, look, I've been a racist, bigotist, sexist, asshole in my lifetime, and I have hurt people with my actions, with my words, by physically turning my back on people. And I take accountability for anything that I've done in my life that demeans or disrespects specifically people of color and women and my friends that are gay and lesbian and bisexual and transsexual and queer and pansexual and whatever the fuck you want to be, man. I love all of you. I hope nothing but the best for all of you, and I want to see all of you succeed. And ultimately, like I said, let not John Gruden fade into obscurity, and we forget why. Let us pin him up by his shirt on the wall and say, "Don't be that fucking guy. Be a little more open minded." Be a little wiser. And that's not to say to have those feelings and not say them publicly. That's not what I'm trying to say. And I'm also not saying try not to have those feelings. What I am saying is open your eyes and understand that specifically, let's talk about people of color, right? Nobody gets to choose that. Why would you dislike someone for something they didn't get to choose? I just want to lay that on the table and walk away. How idiotic is that? That's it. Or more specific, you want to keep going? The genitalia they were literally born with. Like, you don't like a person because she's a woman? First of all, that speaks to a deeper issue. But more importantly, like, it doesn't pass as like a passable reason to dislike someone. What ends up happening is you become the bad guy when you show your bigotry or whatever it is that you are willing to risk everything you have to expose that of yourself, right? Whatever it is that you are, like I said, like I've gone to town on racism and bigotry and sexism. Um, Racism and sexism are really rampant among male-dominated sports, and like I said, I'll close with that. We need to be more accountable as men, as Americans. We are, whether we are the greatest country in the world or not will forever be untrue, but a worthy goal. And the way that we can sort of move past this in a positive manner is to shine a light on the people that do it right. And those guys, for me, fortunately, those guys that I look up to are people like Rex Chapman, are guys like Steve Kerr, were guys like Greg Popovich, people, guys ultimately like Michael fucking Jordan. Ha! They say don't meet your heroes. Fortunately, I've met Michael Jordan on numerous occasions in my lifetime. He was always a badass. And then he also came out and said, I'm a huge believer in science, and of fucking course I got all my players are vaccinated. We ain't never gonna have a problem with that. Obviously didn't say those words exactly, but that's exciting to me, right? That's the GOAT, right? I believe Kobe, for example, and to bring up a dead person is obviously pandering. That's poor taste. I'm sorry, but I believe a Kobe would have gotten vaccine and would have said something about it publicly. In fact, I would have gone so far as to say, guys, and I could have replaced Kobe with guys like David Robinson, Tim Duncan, all the guys that are like the GOATs. I'm excited to see who else steps up. um, and again not just about vaccines or about bigotry in sports, or in general. But I'm sort of excited to see who else kind of steps forward as like, oh, they're a thinker. They're kind of doing it the right way, right? Like, more Michael Jordans, less Kyrie Irvings, right? That's kind of where I'm at. I want to see. I want to hear more from people that are doing it the right way. And obviously, the way that you can help me and reward me for doing it the right way is subscribe to my YouTube channel, follow me on Twitter. You can share the content that I create. I've never been the person to ask for money. I've always thought about like, what if I created a Patreon, but I don't think I have enough of a following to do that. And again, I'm not doing this for money in exchange for money. I'm doing this because I care very deeply about it. Um, so I'll also make sure that you probably are most likely watching this after reading a betting piece that I write for Stampede Blue. There's a host of guys that I brought up Zach Hicks tonight. There are other guys at Stampede Blue like Chris Blystone and Stephen Reed and Mateo Calise, who was on here last week, who we've talked about at length about him being on here long term. One, I'm absolutely thrilled that one of my colleagues who just happens to live in a foreign country, mostly not necessarily because it's like South American, it's Argentina, but he has good internet and he lives with his family and he's in college, right? So those things to me, it's like that's the kind of person that me as like, I'm pushing 40. I'm more like getting into coaching. He's more like getting into broadcasting. He's multilingual, speaks Spanish, good looking kid, great sense of humor, right? That was one of the things that I told him is like, hey, I see potential in you, in entertainment period. I want, that's what I want to do, right? So you definitely got to be able to notice it. And one of the things I really see in Mateo Calise is that English is his second language, and he's really funny, and it isn't his first language, right? And then I told him, I took Spanish for 8 years, so while I probably can keep up with you conversationally, I could probably pick up what you're laying down. And then he started to, he only did it a little bit, but he said some Spanish, and I kind of caught what he was saying, and was like, yeah, no, he's actually really smart and really, and obviously that sounds like I'm giving him props because he's from Argentina. He's supposed to be like poor and stupid. No, he's like a brilliant human being with a talent, and like he expressed to me that he wanted to get into sports journalism when he went to college, but that it's corrupt down there, so that he went for finance instead, because at least then he could get a job that he could like enjoy, right? And he likes numbers, so good for him. But he also has a passion, just like I do, for the Colts and Pacers. And we were just texting earlier, so like I said, leave a comment if you liked seeing Mateo Calise on here speaking in not his native language, right? Absolutely killing it, with great analysis. And he, like I said, he's witty and funny, and these are the kinds of people that you want to raise up, right? So yeah, if you like the content I'm putting out, give me a thumbs up, hit me with a comment. Brian Haas, please stop harassing me about like Chris Ballard or Frank Reich needs to be fired. I'm literally saying the opposite. They're in a winnable division. They're literally in the safest jobs on the planet. They're not gonna get fired. They're very likely in a situation to waltz into the playoffs, literally hand in hand, doing the little backspin across the line. You know what I mean? Like flipping the ball over the goalpost. You know what I mean? Um, Doing the free throw line dunk, uh, into, you know what I mean, after touchdown. Like I said, I know it really feels like I'm spinning the ball on my finger at this point, but like I said, I just it's the writing's kind of on the wall. Like there's no other possible narrative to spin other than it has been so bad, so it can only do a literal 180. Otherwise, heads should roll, even though, like I've said, they won't. Have a great week, everybody. Stay safe out there.